through their presentation before you ask questions. I'm going to try to keep the questions real short, so we just need to get this rolling. Gadi Adelman is going to be our first speaker. He's an expert on terrorism, and I'm going to just leave it at that and let him do it.
Definitely the shortest introduction I've ever had. How's everybody doing tonight? Well, this is a packed house. I'm glad you all came out. This is wonderful. As he said, my name is Gadi Adelman. Brief bio on myself since he didn't read it. Long story short, I was born here in the United States and my family moved to Israel when I was just a child. 1 month after my 14th birthday, I was in Jerusalem at a rally, which was a Zionist rally because it happened to fall the day after the United Nations voted that Zionism was the same as racism. And we had this big rally in Jerusalem, and after the rally, most of us that were teenagers, I was 14, we went, in Israel they had, at that time, like tea and coffee shops where kids would hang out. And we were standing out in front of a cafe, one of these coffee shops, and a bomb went off. And that evening there were 7 kids killed, ranging in age from 12 to 14. And I and my friend were lucky enough to not get hurt physically, but emotionally that stays with you the rest of your life. And that kind of molded me and shaped me into wanting to learn whatever I could about terrorism. And the fortunate thing was I was in Israel, because there was a multitude of things that you could find out and read and study about terrorism, where had I been here, that would not have happened. So that started in 1975. I initially had absolutely no desire whatsoever to study Islam. And my studies in terrorism, because I wanted to wrap my mind around why someone would do what I had survived, why someone would do that to someone else. So my studies of Islam, of terrorism, started all the way back in the Bible with the Sicarii and the Zealots. And I went forward throughout history. And once I hit the 20th century, there was one defining factor that kept coming up. As other countries and other organizations would stop using terrorism, Islam was using it more and more. So I found myself then studying Islam, because at the time I didn't care if you were purple with pink polka dots. If you committed terrorism, that's all I wanted to find out about. But I became an expert, if you will. I don't call myself that, others do. I've read the Quran and I've been studying Islam and terrorism now since I was 14. So that's been, we won't say, 40 years. The color's a little off. I'm not really that color. I'll just say that. So that's a picture of me from when I was in the service. And has everybody here seen the movie Stripes? Okay. It occurred to me, I showed that to a friend of mine, and Major Dave knows him. He and I both spoke. We were all speakers this past weekend at the Constitution rally. And he said that I looked like Saddam Hussein. So if anybody says, I look like Saddam Hussein, I'll kill you. That's the Stripes, okay? But, yeah, I got to look at that. And the color is definitely off. I was a lot more tan. I have a radio show that airs every Thursday evening. It's on the internet. So it is worldwide. We have people that listen from Vietnam to the Philippines to Germany to Israel to Canada and of course the United States. And I've been doing lectures. I write for the Jerusalem Post as well as a lot of other media outlets. INTN is still in the air. They've had some money issues and I'm not doing a lot with them right now, so this is rather old. But if you go on to INTN on the internet, you can probably still hear a lot of my interviews or interviews where they interviewed me. I've taught local and state and federal law enforcement, and I'm on the speakers list for Act for America as well, which if you don't know ACT and you want to find out about Islam, that's a great organization. You can go ahead and just, hit the button. In order for us to understand, and I'm going to have to talk faster, I'm going to be here all night, and then poor Dr. Stein's not going to get any time at all. In order for us to understand the Muslim Brotherhood infiltration into the U.S. government, which is what Dick had asked me to come and speak to you about tonight, you need to understand the Muslim Brotherhood itself. And you need to even understand a little bit about Islam. And I'm going to try and cover a lot, so I'm going to talk fast. And as he said earlier, you know, if you have questions, jot them down and hold them till the end. You can go ahead and hit the next one. the general strategic goal for the Muslim Brotherhood in North America. This was a memo that was found during a raid of a house in 2004 in Annandale, Virginia, by one of the high-ranking people of the Muslim Brotherhood in America. And it's a long-term plan that was approved and adopted by the Brotherhood Shura Council in 1987. Ikhwan is Arabic for brotherhood. So basically what it said was, the Ikhwan must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers so that it is eliminated and God's religion is made victorious over all other religions. Let me just point out that God's religion, they're referring to Allah, and they're referring to the Quran, and they're referring to Islam. That is their overall goal. Let there be no mistake. This document was used in the Holy Land Foundation trial, which was the largest terrorist organization trial in U.S. history. This is their goal. They want to have a mass caliphate, worldwide caliphate, and that's what we see going on right now that's spreading from the Middle East. Go ahead. Their motto, and you can go to their website. They have of course, they have an English website like everybody else. The Muslim Brotherhood motto: Allah is our objective, the Prophet is our leader, the Quran is our law, Jihad is our way, dying in the way of Allah is our highest hope, Allahu Akbar. That is their motto. And we can talk a little bit later about Jihad and what you've heard about it being an inner struggle. Nowhere in the Quran or the Hadith does it say anything about Jihad being any kind of inner struggle. Jihad is war. It's a holy war, plain and simple. When you hear these apologists talking about, oh, it's an inner struggle, believe me, it's not. This is what the Islamic Caliphate or the Ottoman Empire looked like at its height. When you hear about the gates of Vienna and how far it went, you need to understand how large the Caliphate once was. And this is why the Muslim Brotherhood even came into existence. Because after World War I, when all this changed and all these countries were split up, the Caliphate was disbanded. And that's what caused the Muslim Brotherhood in 1928 to be founded. Now the Muslim Brotherhood came to the United States in 1961-62. We're not really sure about the exact date. And its first organization was the Muslim Student Association. Because they realized that if we're going, and one thing that the Muslim Brotherhood is patient. And they know, if we're going to transform this country, if we're going to take over this country, if we're going to turn this country into a Sharia law abiding nation, we have to start with the students. Can you back up one? I'm sorry. No, it's all right. This is local, and it's hard to see in the color. MSA at North Carolina State, MSA of Duke, and the MSA at UNC Chapel Hill. It's very important that you understand the Muslim Student Association. Here's a number that's fact that will shock you. There are more Muslim Student Association chapters in colleges across the United States than Republican and Democratic chapters combined. That's how big the MSA is. Okay. Now they have other groups in the United States. The Muslim Brotherhood has about 40 groups in the United States that are all working towards that same goal. But again, they're very patient and they're very smart, so they each have a different, which was that first web I showed you in that first slide, they each have a different thing that they're trying to achieve, but together it's going to achieve their overall domination of America. The biggest one is Kerry that you hear about on the news a lot, the Council on American Islamic Relations. They're nothing more than Hamas in America. That is exactly how Kerry started. Kerry came from the Holy Land Foundation, which was disbanded because it was a front for Hamas, and it was raising money for Hamas, and that was the Holy Land Foundation trial. But all these other groups, you're going to see these names again. The Islamic Society of North America, the Fiqh Council, ICNA and ISNA. You'll see all these as we go through the slide presentation. Now the Muslim Brotherhood was started by Hassan alBanna in 1928. And basically what you had was 4 or 5 different guys in Egypt saying, you know, we were so big, we had this caliphate. How did we let this happen? We're nothing now. And they started the Muslim Brotherhood to bring back that caliphate. And that's what they're working towards now. It is the nature of Islam to dominate, not to be dominated, to impose its law on all nations, and to extend its powers to the entire planet. That was a quote from Hassan alBanna. Saeed Qutb, who actually studied in the United States for a short time, wrote a book called Milestones, which is like the Jihadi field manual. That picture of him, yes, he is behind bars. When he went back to Egypt and joined the Muslim Brotherhood, which, by the way, it's outlawed there, and you may have seen that with what happened over the past few years with their coup and everything else, he was jailed in Egypt. The movement of Islam, which is then to be carried out throughout the earth, to the whole of mankind, as the object of this religion is all humanity, and its sphere of action is the whole earth. That is their goal, to make Islam the only accepted religion on earth. This is what jihad really looks like. People think that it's just 9/11, it's just violent. There are many, many different types of jihad, including stealth jihad, which is what's happening in the United States right now. I've been screaming about stealth jihad for years, and people like Chris Christie and I have had arguments over this. He doesn't believe that jihad or Sharia even exists. It's nothing to worry about. He said I was crazy. So, and that tells you how I feel about Chris Christie. The Muslim Brotherhood and Sharia law and stealth jihad, they are all working at the same time to bring down the United States, along with the jihad that we hear about, which is the holy war, which is a violent struggle. But there's jihad of the head, jihad of the hand, jihad of the mouth, jihad of the heart. There's a lot of other jihads in ways that they're trying to do this that we call stealth jihad. Jihad means to war against non-Muslims. It comes from the word mujahada, pardon me. And if you heard of the mujahideen in Afghanistan, that's where that comes from. It actually comes from the word that means to war against non-Muslims. So when you hear Muslims or imams or people that are supposed to know what they're talking about telling you that jihad is an inner struggle and that it doesn't mean war, that comes right out of the book, The Reliance of the Traveler. The Reliance of the Traveler is a handbook that was written for Muslims who are living outside of a country where Sharia law is dominant. In other words, if you're a Muslim from Saudi Arabia and you move to the United States, this book tells you how to live in the United States. It tells you how to live outside Sharia law. What can you do? What can you not do? How do you do it so that you're not committing a sin? Because a lot of things that we do every day in the United States are not allowed under Sharia law. So that's what the Reliance of the Traveler is. That book is accepted worldwide by Muslims everywhere, and that is in there. That quote is actually in there. So it's not me, Gadi Adelman, telling you that jihad means war. They believe it. That's their words, not mine. The objectives of the Muslim Brotherhood, the establishment of Islamic governments and the implementation of Sharia law, Islamic law, worldwide. That is their goal. Now, the project was a document that was written in 1982 that was found in Switzerland right after 9/11 when I don't know if it was the Swiss Army or the Swiss police, so I apologize that I don't remember, but the Swiss government raided a top Muslim Brotherhood financier's house, and they found this document that had been guarded and been kept secret since 1982. It actually stated on there it was not to be shared with anyone. It's a 100-year plan on how to get Sharia law to be throughout the West. And the strategies that are mentioned in there is, it's just phenomenal when you look at overall how they're doing things. Getting democratically elected individuals who are devout Muslims, political, religious ideology, incitement to hate, violence against the Jews and the Christians and other non-Muslims. This is what we see going on right now. The mass media, what a lot of people are referring to as the war on Christianity, it's not the Democrats that are behind it. It's not the liberal left that's siding with wanting to get rid of Christianity. It's Islam, and they're using the mass media, and they're using their ways of doing it, and unfortunately there's a lot of those on the left that believe in kumbaya, and if we hold hands, and we just love everybody, we're all going to get along, and they jump on the bandwagon, and they don't even realize what they're helping achieve. So it's you know, get that out of your head that it's the left that's trying to get rid of Christianity. The woman in clerk, Kim Davis, Kentucky. Kim Davis is a Democrat. You know, so it's not all Democrats that hate Christians. I want to make that straight. Or Jews, for that matter. And by the way, is there anybody here besides me that's Jewish? Hey, Shana Tova. Happy New Year, everybody. Cultural jihad by deceit. Taqiyya is Arabic. Taqiyya is actually in the Quran and in the Hadith. The Quran is their book, what we refer to as a Bible. This is the Quran, and I'm not real happy to say I've read it several times. Never read the Bible from cover to cover. I know this inside now, which is sad but good in a way. Taqiyya is giving the Muslim the right to lie without committing sin, so long as he is lying to further Islam or protect himself. So the question then comes up, how do you know when they're telling the truth? You don't. It's real simple, because they can lie to you if they feel they are furthering the cause of Islam or they're protecting themselves. I've had many conversations with Muslims where I ask them things, and I have a certain way of asking them, where I get them into a corner, and then Taqiyya starts. Oh boy, does Taqiyya. Oh, I'm not a devout Muslim. I don't believe in that stuff. That's just the Sunnis. That's just the Shias. I'm not like that. I mean, the stories I've gotten from people are just amazing, especially the ones that call into my show. Okay. Now, the phases of the movement, and this is hard to see. There were 5 phases in the 100-year plan. And basically, phases 1 through 4, well, 3 and 4, which is why I have it in red, they're doing now. 1 and 2 have already been accomplished, and this is the last part of seizing power to make the United States and the West and the rest of the world Islamic.
We can't read red.
Yeah, I'm going to read it to you. Phase 1 is the discrete establishment of elite leadership, getting Muslims elected, democratically elected devout Muslims, or those that don't admit that they're Muslim that are, just getting them into office. Phase 2 is the gradual appearance on the public scene, exercising, utilizing various public activities. That's where you see CARE, because they are a civil action group for Islam, the Council of American Islamic Relations. Phase 3 is the escalation phase, using mass media. And phase 4 is open public confrontation with the government through exercising political pressure approach. People in CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, have been quoted as saying, we are going to use your constitution to get rid of your constitution. And if you look at what's happening in the United States right now, I don't need to tell you how our constitution is, well, with our current administration, it's been put through a shredder. But that is exactly what they're doing. How are they going to use our Constitution to get rid of our Constitution? It's real simple. You can't say that to me. It's a church and state. It's my religion. I have a right. That's my constitutional right for religion. They know the Constitution better than most Americans, and that's scary. They know exactly what to say and when to say it. The last phase is seizing power to establish an Islamic nation under which all parties and Islamic groups become united. All those different organizations are going to come back together. You may see infighting right now, but when it happens, they're going to come together. Okay? This is the actual document that, one of the documents that was found, that was used in the Holy Land Foundation trial. And aside from the fact that my dog chewed it up, I actually have a copy of it. And yeah, you can see it here. It was stamped Government Exhibit, U.S. versus Holy Land Foundation. This, which was translated, obviously, a list of organizations and the organizations of our friends. Imagine if they all march according to one plan. This was brought into evidence during the largest terrorism trial in the United States, and it was never argued. They never tried to get it taken out. They never said it wasn't theirs, referring to the Muslim Brotherhood. These are the different organizations. Now look at your first two. They were in that other slide. The Islamic Society of North America. It's a Muslim Brotherhood offshoot. Muslim Student Association. Remember, there's more of them out there than Democratic and Republican chapters combined. These are their friends. We're all going to work together. That's a list of 29, and the only reason you don't see CARE on there is CARE didn't exist yet. Okay? The Islamic Association for Palestine became CARE It grew out of the Holy Land Foundation because they were outlawed. But there's all your organizations. If you watch the news, you may very well have heard of some of these organizations. The scary part is they all have 501c3 status. They're all nonprofit organizations. Many of them are receiving grants through our tax dollars. There's that kumbaya again. Okay? Now, as far as our own people and our administration, gotta love this guy. Jihad is a moral holy struggle. He was the counterterrorism advisor, and at that time when he said that jihad is a holy struggle. He said that in August 2009. He says it's a legitimate tenet of Islam, meaning to purify oneself or one's community. Now, he is currently the director of the CIA. And before anybody saves the question for the end, if you heard that he had converted to Islam, I know for a fact that man right there is a Muslim. There were 4 witnesses in Saudi Arabia when he was the station head chief in Saudi Arabia for the CIA. 4 witnesses, one who's a friend of mine who was in the room when he converted. That man is a convert. He will not tell you he's a Muslim. He is lying through his teeth. And that is why he says things like this, because he is furthering Islam. Now think about that when you go to sleep tonight for a warm and fuzzy. He's the director of the CIA. And think about who appointed him. Okay? February 13, 2010 at New York University. These are quotes from Brennan. And as part of that experience, to learn about the goodness and beauty of Islam, I came to see Islam not as it is often misrepresented, but for what it is. A faith of peace and tolerance and great diversity. This is what pisses me off the most, pardon my French, folks. And in all my travels, the city I have come to love most is Al-Quds. Does anybody here know what Al-Quds is? Jerusalem. Jerusalem. They won't refer to it as Jerusalem. They call it Al-Quds. Now, why would John Brennan, at a speech, is that a faux pas, or did he do it on purpose? That's an exact quote. I love Al-Quds. May 26th, at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, he said, the President's strategy is absolutely clear about the threat we face. Our enemy is not terrorism, because terrorism is but a tactic. Our enemy is not terror, because terror is a state of mind, and as Americans, we refuse to live in fear. Nor do we describe our enemy as jihadists or Islamists, because jihad is a holy struggle, a legitimate tenet of Islam, meaning to purify oneself or one's community, and there is nothing holy or legitimate or Islamic about murdering innocent men, women, and children. Well, I think he needs to wonder what ISIL stands for. That's the head of the CIA making these comments. These are exact quotes. You can look them up. There's the dates and where he said them. The head of the CIA. Go ahead. Here's another brilliant winner, James Clapper. Gotta love this quote. The term Muslim Brotherhood is an umbrella term for a variety of movements. In the case of Egypt, as if in Egypt they're different than anywhere else. The Muslim Brotherhood is the Muslim Brotherhood is the Muslim Brotherhood. Plain and simple. And we all know what happened in Egypt. When Morsi ended up getting, finally, he's in jail, thank God. Again, another one, an apologist. They've decried Al-Qaeda as a perversion of Islam. That is what you hear many Muslims saying. Oh, ISIS, that's not Islam. That ISIL thing, and I say ISIL as a joke because that's what our administration calls it. It's ISIS. That ISIS thing and Al-Qaeda, that's not true Islam. Really? I can show you in here where it is. 67%. 67% of this book is violence. That tells you something right there. The Department of Homeland Security, the terminology to define terrorists, recommends terms suggested by the advisors with Muslim Brotherhood links. You know, you couldn't write this as a comedy bit because nobody would believe it. Our Department of Homeland Security has removed the word terrorism from its lexicon. It's totally gone. Along with jihadist, along with Muslim, along with Islam, it's gone. You will not find it. You'll find man-made catastrophe. You'll find violent extremism, which basically defines probably 50% of this room. Because if you believe in the Constitution or you fly a flag, man, you should look out, because we're the terrorists. they have taken the words out, and the reason they took these words out was pressure from groups like CARE. I personally was invited to speak at the Joint Terrorism Task Force to a group of new recruits that were going from the FBI into the Joint Terrorism Task Force in Quantico, 2-day speech. And I got all excited, and I contacted Dr. Walid Ferris, who's a colleague of mine who's spoken with them before. And I was, how much should I ask them for? They were going to pay me, they were going to fly me up there. And I waited about 2 weeks, and I didn't hear from them. And I contacted them back, and they said, oh, we won't be needing you after all. And within about a week of that happening is when it came out that you can no longer teach about terrorism in the United States to our federal government unless you're Muslim. So people like myself, John Guandolo, who wrote the book for the Joint Terrorism Task Force, Claire Lopez, Steve Emerson, Robert Spencer, Walid Ferris, none of us are Muslim. We can no longer teach. And basically, here's what cracks me up, because on the one hand you have the organizations like CARE saying, why do you always equate terrorism with Islam? We're not all terrorists. But then on the other hand, it's like, hey, if you want to teach about this stuff, you better be a Muslim. Because we don't want them teaching it. They're not Muslim. That is the same thing as if in World War II, we had only brought in Nazis to teach our troops about Nazism. That's how crazy it is. The national leadership has submitted to Islamic law. You're not kidding. All the departments have to follow the same rules. And basically what they're doing, and don't misunderstand this, I have a lot of friends that work for DHS as well as other organizations. They want to do their job. They're trying to keep us safe. Their hands are being tied by the White House. Their hands are being tied. Imagine if you're a CIA analyst and you hear of an upcoming possibility chatter of an attack on the homeland. And you're not allowed to mention Muslim, they might happen to be Muslim, or Islam, or Jihad, or terrorism. How do you as an analyst even go about writing your report to protect the United States when your hands are tied and you're not allowed to use those words? Don't invoke Islam. Avoid labeling everything Muslim. Use the term violent extremist. Never use the word jihadist or mujahideen. This is from the National Counterterrorism Center in 2008, and they're still adhering to it. And I hope to God the next president changes all this. The National Security Strategy removed Islamic extremism from its text. If you go back and look, every year the president comes out, well, he's supposed to. Every year the president comes out with the National Security Strategy. If you really want to have a good laugh, read it. Because, like I said, most of the people in this room, we're the ones that are going to be worried about and watched. When we have ISIS, and the FBI has admitted now, the FBI has admitted to knowing of at least one ISIS jihad member, a soldier of ISIS, in every one of the 50 states of the United States. At least one in every state. And I can guarantee you there's a lot more than one. The lexicon does not contain the words Islam, Islamic, or Muslim. How are we supposed to guard about something? Again, World War II, if you knew something was going to happen and you couldn't say German or Nazi, how did you tell somebody there was going to be an attack by, charades, that group over there? Not allowed to say their name. They are changing what these people can and can't even say or write in a report. How are we supposed to protect ourselves? This is what our guys are working against, guys and gals. In October 2011, the Department of Justice confirms that the Obama administration pulled back all training materials for law enforcement, national security communications to eliminate all references to Islam that CARE and the Muslim, the MPAC, find offensive. That's when I was told I couldn't teach. That's when it happened. Muslim Brotherhood Advisory Panel of that training materials is going to paralyze local law enforcement and national security in their ability to counter this. This is what's happening. They are making it harder for these guys to keep us safe with their PC correctness. I want to be perfectly clear. Oh, this is great. Dwight Holton.
This is a United States attorney that said this. I want to be perfectly clear about this. Training materials that portray Islam as a religion of violence or with a tendency towards violence are wrong. They are offensive, and they are contrary to everything that this president, this Attorney General, that was Holder at the time, and Department of Justice stands for. They will not be tolerated. I'm sorry, but maybe it's just me and it's common sense. Okay, not all Muslims are going to be terrorists, I get that. But in the war on terror, where's Afghanistan? Where's Iraq? Where's Iran? Where's Saudi Arabia? Our president won't put up with that? He won't allow it? I don't think that we have to worry about the training materials that portray Islam as a religion of violence. All we have to do is look at Islam and know it's a religion of violence. If you want to have a lot of fun, read this book. I challenge anybody to tell me how many times the word love is mentioned in the Quran versus war. And if you want afterwards, I'll tell you. Go ahead. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton hosted a Washington, D.C. meeting with the Organization of Islamic Conference. Think about this if this woman manages to be the presidential candidate for the Democratic Party. The Organization of Islam has made it illegal in the countries where they've managed to do it to criticize Islam. That would mean that what I'm doing right now I could be arrested for. If that happens here in the United States, I don't know what happened to freedom of speech, but if you want to talk about facts, just what's in this book, not what they're doing or what Gotti thinks they're doing or my opinion, facts, I could be arrested because it's a criticism of Islam. Let's start with the fact that the Prophet Muhammad was a pedophile. That's a known fact. If I said that, I could be arrested because I'm criticizing Islam. Well, I'm sorry. I can't help the fact that the man, when he was 53, married a 6-year-old. Her name was Aisha. It's in your book. It's in the Hadith. It's history. And this is why you see older men with little girls in these huge weddings that they have in the Middle East. You can go ahead. We all remember this, right? At the UN, the future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam. If I had told you on 9/10 or 9/11, or 9/12 for that matter, the day after, that we'd have a president 10, 12 years later who would say that at the United Nations representing the United States of America, you would have had me put in a padded room. This is where we've gotten. Some of the things the Muslim Brotherhood operatives are currently, now this is what you guys came to hear. These are the guys that are currently working in the administration. Okay? Imam Ali Khan is the Deputy Executive Director for Homeland Security, Law Enforcement, and Fire EMS at the Los Angeles World Airports. He was the Assistant Secretary for Policy Development for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Yes, he's a devout Muslim. Yes, he is part of the Muslim Brotherhood. Look at what he does now. Think about that the next time you have to fly into LAX. Muhammad El-Abari, the former Homeland Security Advisor. I say former because he's not there anymore. Rashid Hussain, Special Envoy and Coordinator for Strategic Counterterrorism Communications. We've got a Muslim Brotherhood member who's working on the counterterrorism communications. Fox and the Hen House, exactly. Salam Amrati is an Obama advisor. He's the founder of the MPAC, Muslim Public Affairs Council, and he's the current executive director. Remember, that was one of those groups that's on the list, but he's an advisor to the president. And again, these are things, if you want to jot it down, don't take my word for it, go home, research it, find out for yourself. Mohammed Magid is, they say they don't have a Sharia czar, but if you go back, and this is all public knowledge, you can go back and you can look at the visitors list of the White House. You can see who's coming and going every day from the White House. Look up this Imam's name and see how many times he's visited the White House, and you'll notice a pattern. He's only there when the president's there. He is basically Obama's Sharia czar. He was given that nickname. He's on the advisory committee to the Department of Homeland Security. Ibu Patel, I love this. This was a new group that Obama created. The Advisory Council on Faith-Based Neighborhood Partnerships. That's basically bringing what I call Christalam. When you see Christian churches inviting in imams and doing prayers together, and that's that guy. That's what's the push behind that. Dahlia Mogahed, the first woman to ever work in the White House on a daily basis that wears a hijab, a headscarf. She is also on the Advisory Council of Faith-Based Neighborhood Partnerships. Her office is in the White House. She is there every day. She's a devout Muslim and has ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. Ali Khan, and I'm going to roll over each of these so you can see the kinds of things that they said. He's the founder of the World Islamic Organization, which an Egyptian magazine, okay, a Muslim Egyptian magazine identifies as a Brotherhood subsidiary. It suggested that he was responsible for a file of Islamic states in the White House, and he provides a direct link between Obama and the Arab Spring revolutions of 2011. El-Abari, Department of Homeland Security advisor, he tweeted that a caliphate is inevitable and compared it to the European Union. He was recently criticized, he also recently criticized what he called drive-by attacks on Islam, and he has a history of pro-Muslim Brotherhood advocacy and has close ties to a Hamas financier. He's the former Homeland Security advisor. The reason is because of that tweet. Thank God it went viral, and there was enough pressure that he had to step down. Because think about that. An advisor for Homeland Security that said it's inevitable that we're going to have a caliphate. Hussein, Special Envoy for Counterterrorism. Policymakers should reject the use of language that provide religious legitimization of terrorism, such as Islamic terrorism and Islamic extremism. They should replace such terminology with more specific and descriptive terms, such as Al-Qaeda terrorism. This is why we heard when they all of a sudden started taking the word Islam out of everything, we heard we're not at war with Islam, we're at war with Al-Qaeda. We'll just get rid of Al-Qaeda, our problems are going to be solved. No, they won't, because there's an ideology behind it, with the religion wrapped inside it. I tell people a lot, I say it's a so-called religion. If you understand Sharia law, which is a way of life, and it governs everything you do, from the moment you wake up, to the way you go to the bathroom, and that's no exaggeration, to the way you do contracts, the way your politics are done, the way you have sex, the way you do shopping, the way you sleep and eat, it tells you how to do everything. That is Sharia law, and wrapped inside it is Islam. So it's this ideology that has that wrapped inside. In 1999 PBS Interview, on September 11th, the day of the attack, this putz called Hezbollah Attacks Legitimate Resistance. He was on a Los Angeles radio program and he said, if we're going to look at suspects, now he's talking about who, this is before we knew who crashed the planes into the towers. If we're going to look at suspects, we should look at the groups that benefit the most from these kinds of incidents. And I think we should put the state of Israel on the suspect list, because I think it diverts attention from what's happening in the Palestinian territories so that they can go on with their aggression and occupation and apartheid policies. So basically what he's saying is, you know, Israel was behind the 9/11 attack, and it was also that that little country could keep those Palestinian people down. That's why they did that. Took 3,000 Americans, doesn't matter. That was... He is the founder of the Muslim Public Affairs Council and its current executive director. There's your Sharia czar, often in the White House. The government has produced ample evidence to establish the associations of CARE, ISNA, and NATE, and the Holy Land Foundation, the Islamic Association for Palestine, with Hamas. You know, his group was found as a co-conspirator during that terror trial. He still is in the White House almost on a daily basis. Patel spoke at a Muslim Student Association, let's not forget who they are, and an ISNA convention. He appeared on the panel alongside Tariq Ramadan, the grandson of the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood, And also Shiraz Wadhaj, who was named a co-conspirator in the '93 World Trade Center bombing. Okay, fine. Now that's association. A lot of people say it's guilt by association. It's not enough. As an attorney, he defended the convicted World Trade Center bombers, and he advocates the Islamic takeover of America. Okay. We're almost done. There's Dahlia Mogahed. Islamophobia in America is very real. Asserts Islamic terrorism is just an expression of Muslim grievances. Now, if you're going to say that in the same sentence, Islamophobia is real. Anybody who talks against Islam, you're just phobia, that's a phobia, it's Islamophobia. But by the way, terrorism is just an expression of our grievances. She falsely equates Sharia values with constitutional rights and somehow claims that Muslim women experience gender equality under Sharia.
Yeah.
Women are 1/4 of a man according to their book and according to Sharia law. 1/4 of a man. And last but not least, we have John Kerry. I am proud of the Iranian Americans in my own family. Anybody wondering why there's a deal with Iran on the table and he was part of it? Do you guys know that his son-in-law is Iranian?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So I figured most of you guys would know that. They've enriched my life, Kerry said in an official statement. You can find that at whitehouse.gov or statedepartment.gov, the different statements he's made. He's strongly committed to resolving the differences between the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran to the mutual benefit of our people. Well, I know who it's going to benefit, the deal that just went through.
Yeah.
And your Chief of Staff, Deputy Chief of Staff, Uma Abedin, I don't even need to go into her.
Oh, yeah.
Both her parents, her mother belongs to the Muslim Sisterhood. And, of course, her father is Muslim Brotherhood ties. Okay? All right, so here's what we can do so I can wrap this up, because I didn't realize I was talking this long. There's only one way to defeat any enemy, and that is to know and understand the enemy. Do your own research. I say this all the time, every time I give a lecture. Educate yourself. Don't listen to me. Take what I've told you here. If you question it, go out, check it. The internet has a lot of BS on it, but it's got a lot of good information as well. Come to your own conclusions. But once you've educated yourself, it's your responsibility to educate others. This is nothing more than a numbers game. That's all it is. The more people we can talk to about this, the more people find out, the less chance they're going to be able to bring in phase 5 of the caliphate here in the States. Enforce our laws. Whoever knowingly or willfully advocates, abets, advises, or teaches the duty, necessity, desirability, or propriety of overthrowing or destroying the government of the United States shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 20 years or both, shall be ineligible for any employment by the United States or any department or agency thereof for the 5 years following the conviction. That's federal law. Every one of those people that's working for the government in that slide presentation fall into that category. And political correctness. I mean, I don't need to even go over this. Although, review the Department of Defense chaplain course. Yeah, they've changed that. You've got a lot more imams in the Department of Defense now while they are tying the hands of the Christians and the Jews, even in our Department of Defense. And last, be proud of American achievements. We need to talk this up, and I mean to everybody. This is what we need to do. Relearn our history and the history of the Western civilization and teach it to our children, and in some cases, our grandchildren. I guarantee you they're not learning it in school. And Dr. Stein can tell you about that. Honor the heroes who keep us free. Our founding fathers, Medal of Honor recipients, and law enforcement. This Black Lives Matter thing and open season on cops, talk to people about this. Don't be afraid. We have got to stop being the silent majority. Because most people don't agree with this, of what's happening. They're just afraid to speak out about it. And I think that's pretty much it. Yep, that's it.
Join Gadi and his co-host Dee, the Crimson Warrior, for America Akbar. America is greater. Each week, Thursday nights, 8 to 10, only on Blog Talk Radio and the Radio Jihad Network.